Welcome to Film at 50, a podcast that celebrates semi-centennials in the world of cinema. I'm your host, Brian Rowe, and I'm delighted to welcome Marcus Gorman to the podcast today to talk about Brewster McCloud,
Oh boy.
directed by Robert Altman, released about 50 years ago on December 5th, 1970. How are we doing, Marcus?
I'm doing great. My sister just gave birth this morning, so I'm here. I'm tired. I'm ready to talk about some weird Altman stuff.
Yeah, congratulations on that. That's so exciting. I'm so happy that you're here. We go way back to 2003. You were
Mhm.
the A&E editor, correct, of the
Yeah.
Loyolan, 03. And I came in my freshman year. I'd just been the A&E editor of my high school newspaper in Reno, Nevada, at Reno High School. And so I became staff writer for you over the course of the next couple of years, wrote a lot of reviews for you. We had a great friendship back then. It was great to work with you, and I haven't seen you in a long time. So I just want to say it's very exciting to be here on the podcast today with you and to talk to you again.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So let's start with just a general question about movies. What are some of your favorite films going back to childhood to now, and kind of what role has movies played in your life?
Movies play a very large role in my life. Brian mentions we met at Loyola Marymount, where I was studying film and minoring in English, and I was the A&E editor. Specifically, we split it that year for film, television. That was my half. Film,
Oh, right.
television, and
Okay.
theater, and the other half was like music and events, and that
Mm-hmm.
was Jean-Luc's purview. Um, my mother has a degree in film from UCLA. I grew up with film. I now program for the Seattle International Film Festival, mostly new American cinema and WTF, so genre cinema, horror, fantasy, what have you. I also program for the Seattle Queer Film Festival, and most recently the Outstream Film Festival, which is a LGBTQ streaming festival made specifically during the pandemic.
Wow,
Um,
that's
yeah,
fantastic.
and I do a lot of stuff. And I live in Seattle. I am a playwright. Some of my posters are over there, movie posters over here, plays
Yes,
over
you
there.
are a playwright and a novelist, right? You've written some
Yeah.
novels too.
Yeah, I don't quite write novels much anymore, but I did
Okay.
write two,
Mm-hmm.
Triceratops and Sky and Masterson Private Detective. But now
Mm-hmm.
that I wrote novels because I couldn't get people to join me in theater, and now that
Mm.
I do have a bunch of weirdos up here in Seattle who do, that's mostly what I do. I do film programming half the year, and I write and produce theater the other half of the year. That was sorry, that was me
Fantastic.
introducing myself through the answers. But a lot of things I like are nostalgic for my childhood and wild cinema. I have a tie for favorite film, and they're both adventures. There
Okay.
is Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure,
Yes.
and until recently, my favorite film was Pee Wee's Big Adventure. Until I watched them both in theaters last year for the first time and found I had a stronger emotional reaction to one and a stronger aesthetic reaction to the other. And I
Oh,
can't
interesting.
decide between them, but they are both very much a part of me. I love Almost Famous. I like Boogie Nights. I like Sunset Boulevard. Um,
It's my
I
favorite
love
film.
music.
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Oh,
Sunset
right.
Boulevard.
And you saw the Glenn Close revival in New
Yes.
York,
In spring of 2017. It
which
was such a yeah.
opened a week after I was in New York, because I
Oh.
go every January. However, I did see Glenn Close in the original production in the early '90s in LA, pre-Broadway, but post-London, right after they uh, replaced why am I blanking? Patty LuPone.
Yeah,
Patty
Patti
LuPone
LuPone.
was
Mm-hmm.
was the British Norma Desmond, and then
Mm-hmm.
they fired her for the American version, which is a big controversy.
Oh, okay.
Sunset Boulevard is wonderful. I also love Ed Wood, That Thing You
Mm-hmm.
Do, but I like a lot of different things, but I am like known as the guy who likes musicals.
Okay.
I will, if there's a musical, I will watch them. I watched Netflix's movie Jingle Jangle last night, the stupid
Oh,
holiday
yeah.
movie,
How is that?
because it's a musical. It's fine.
It's fine.
Um, the songs are by John Legend. They sort of push the plot forward sometimes, and the choreographer is the one who did Greatest Showman, so it looks like that. So if you like Greatest Showman, there's more of that. If you found it annoying, here's more of it. It
And you
has an
also you also like cats, right?
yes, I saw. Okay, I saw Cats 8 times in
Oh
theaters.
my god.
8 times. I'm actually, the thing is, I've seen the play twice, and I actually didn't quite get it.
Okay.
Turns out there's nothing to get about it. It is just cats. There is something, and this would take us hours to talk about why I like cats. Um, There is something so nightmarish and off-putting, but the thing is, so many movies now are very focus tested. They're made by the executive producers and not the filmmakers. For better for worse, this is Tom Hooper's Cats.
Yeah.
And mistakes were made, thousands of mistakes that aren't allowed to happen in most major films nowadays from Universal. Um, and and aside from the celebrities, like there are some miserable performances in that movie, and but it's from the two of the bigger names. But there is a dance and theater ensemble who holds the center of it. And if you've ever done theater or fringe film work, you recognize the spirit within them, and
Mhm.
they pull so hard to make this insane nonsense work that it is just intoxicating. It is not a movie for everybody. I'm not saying everybody has it wrong. No, everybody has it right. I just have a tolerance for this. And if you just kind of sit in the dark, it doesn't work on home video either. So
Okay.
you have to be in this dark world where it envelops you with its insane ideas. You can't escape from it. If you have your cell phone or a light on or like you're making dinner, it's not going to work. Um, so yes, and I saw Cats because musicals don't happen much anymore. Back in the
Mhm.
30s and 40s and early 50s, there were a musical a week.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Now, what do you say? These years, what do we get? Maybe 2 a year or something like that?
maybe two a year mainstream like theatrical release.
Yeah.
I get submitted a lot of musicals that will never see the light of day. But they try, and I'm
Hmm.
glad to watch them.
Hmm.
And there are musicals in other countries, but like for instance, one of the best musicals of the last 10 years is called Hipsters. It is a Russian film. It is their
Okay.
first musical in like 70 years.
Hmm.
And
Wow.
so it's all this pent up energy. It's basically the story of swing kids, but it's about communism instead.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
It's super weird.
It's newer. Like
It
it's a new
came
film.
out. It came out like we screened it at SIFF in 2010.
Oh, okay. So in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Musicals are not for everybody, but yeah, yeah, you get like two a year, and most of them are adapted from plays.
Yep.
That wasn't true for the first 40 years of musicals in cinema. They were original productions mostly.
Mm.
And there's a book about this called Roadshow that musicals started to die in cinemas in the 60s. Partially it's the social shift that I'm sure we'll talk about in Brewster McCloud.
Mhm.
Um, but also they just kept on just adapting plays and adapting stage musicals and not doing anything else. So it kind of caught in the market. They were all very expensive. A lot of them lost a lot of money. Even wonderful films like Hello Dolly is kind of considered a bomb, even though it was in the top 10. It just cost you damn much. Musicals can be anything. Back in the 30s and 40s, all the Alice Faye movies were pretty small. The Carmen Miranda movies were basically here's a comedy, and then here's a nightclub. We'll move over to them for a while. And they toss them out in like 6 weeks. You don't need to
Mhm.
spend a year making a musical. You don't need to get all the families together. You can make something weird like Hedwig and the Angry Inch, which is probably the best musical of the last 20 years, and probably the best musical since Little Shop, which is the perfect musical.
The 1986 film.
Yes.
Oh, it's
Oh
one of my
yes.
favorites.
The,
Oh
the
my
Frank
gosh.
Oz.
Yeah, it's great.
Both versions, and I mean, I like the sad ending, but I prefer the happy
Mm.
ending. I know they don't deserve it, but the version of them in the movie are much nicer than the ones in the play.
Yeah, that blew my mind as a kid when I learned of the alternate ending. Like I
Oh
got,
God.
I got a copy of that early DVD that had it in black and
Oh
white,
right.
and it was fascinating. I was like, I'd been watching that movie since I was a kid. I had no idea until I was older that there was this other ending, and it's amazing. It's like one of the most amazing alternate endings to a movie ever created.
Crazy. And like the reason why it doesn't work, it goes on way too long. It takes something that's about 3 minutes in the play and extends it to like 14
Yeah.
minutes. Um, but it's good to have both. And Frank Oz, I miss him making films.
Absolutely.
He's one of the last people to do like practical effects nonstop, which I
Hmm.
really miss.
Yeah. So you mentioned Hello Dolly. That came out in 1969. So that's kind of getting us into the 1970s, which is the decade we're going to be talking about on this podcast for a long while. You mentioned musicals. You know, it's so interesting to look at like how big musicals were in like the early 60s. You have like West Side Story and The Sound of Music. And then by the time we get to like 1970, 1971, you know, there would be a few more hits. Like Fiddler on the Roof came out in 71, and that did really well, like box office and at the Academy Awards and things like that. But by like 1970, they're not as popular, right? I mean, you know, we just talked on the podcast about the movie Scrooge, which was a musical that came out at the end of 1970,
Hmm.
but it wasn't a big box office hit. It didn't do very well at the Academy Awards. There did seem to be this like this fading of interest in musicals by the time we get to 1970. That is kind of unfortunate, because I feel like maybe we could have gotten some more really, really good ones in this
I mean,
decade.
we should have.
There's not a whole lot of musicals released in the 70s, right?
No, I mean, really, just the Ken Russell ones are the noteworthy ones. So Tommy and Listomania, I think, is still the 70s.
Okay, yeah.
Quadrophenia is either late 70s or early 80s. So they started becoming rock things. So musicals like Tin Pan Alley is what we call a lot of these. These were pop hits when they were on stage. And the things you hear in these, Gershwin, in these Frank Lesser ones, in these Lorenz Hart musicals, they would be the things you hear on the radio and buy records for. That stopped happening in the 60s.
Okay.
The musicals started to seem really corny to a lot of people. There's, what's this newfangled rock music, this folk music, this revolution music. Musicals are not that, like, most people don't think of musicals that way. Yes, things like Hair and Godspell exist, but people think of musicals as corny, as family friendly, and I'm very defensive about that. I'm saying, no, those ones are like that. They just happen to be popular.
Yeah.
I had a point somewhere in there. Yes, so the musicals in the 70s were not creating radio hits. So there's a split between what we listen to that is popular and what is happening on stage, and it just keeps on dying and dying and dying. And for the most part, all the musicals that work now tend to be jukebox musicals like Mamma Mia or Moulin Rouge, or just family friendly stuff like Greatest Showman, which is both it's a very bad film, but it's the only musical in the last like 15 years that seems to be directed like a musical.
The Greatest Showman, I really enjoyed that. I saw that with my mom, and we were both just so happy and giddy as we walked out of the theater. I really, really enjoyed The Greatest Showman.
It's fun. Yeah, right. And you're good about noticing, like, here's this ambition. Ambitious messes are fun. Here's the thing. I am married to a circus scholar, a freak show scholar. That is what she got her PhD in. That's what she teaches. And the movie is one giant lie.
Really?
None of it is true.
Okay.
Barnum was such a piece of capitalist filth.
Okay.
That is not the man you see in the movie at all. It is so weird. Like, a lot of biopics are like that, but if you live with somebody who studies this, that is all you hear. And she watches it a lot. She teaches it, but she's like, here's what's true and here's not is what's true.
Interesting. So let's get into the 1970s. You mentioned before we started recording, it's kind of hard to pick a favorite, right, of the 1970s. So many great films released that decade. So tell me about what are the films of those years that really stick out to you?
Well, the first one is a musical, which is De Palma's Phantom of the Paradise.
Oh,
it's a movie I grew up on. It's wonderful. I grew up on it. I didn't get it till I was like 18, but it's it's Phantom, it's Faust, it's all these things, and Dorian Gray. It's all thrown together with this weird glam rock soundtrack. Here's the thing. Here's a musical from 1973, 74. Major bomb.
Huge bomb.
Yeah. It's only liked by, like, Canada loved it. Apparently Winnipeg loved it, and they have a yearly Phantom Fest up there. And I heard about this through Jessica Harper, who's the third lead in that film. Wonderful film. But the year after is the musical that everybody knows, Rocky Horror Picture Show. Which I've done the shadow cast. I've been a prop guy on those. And Rocky Horror, it's not a very good film. It's also not a very good play, but it has these elements that are really fun about it and very transgressive at the time. Everybody's wonderful in it. It doesn't make a lot of sense. The third act is, I want to be pretty. We're going to put on a show. Oh, you're going to kill me. I'm going to space. It doesn't matter. It's everything around it. It became the longest running film of all time that's only been stopped by the freaking pandemic.
Yeah, exactly.
And I adore it. It is a big giant mess of a film, and I've seen it at least 50 times.
Rocky Horror is such a strange movie for me because the first 45 minutes to an hour I absolutely love. It's one great memorable song after another, and then the last 30 to 45 minutes it doesn't come back. Like, there's something off about the second half. There are moments that I like in the second half. There's moments that I like in the second half, but it's not at the same level of the first, which is really strange. Most movies, it's the opposite. They'll get better in the second half, but this one didn't.
Yeah. Well, but and since it's a stage musical that was originally done in nightclubs, musicals tend to have a second act problem. The first act, if you split them into 2 acts and not 3 acts. First act is where all the cool stuff happens. You know, a musical is like a 75-minute first act and like a 55-minute second act. And they're having all the fun in the first act, and then they have to actually deal with the ramifications of what they're doing. So musicals tend to have this problem because it's all about showmanship. It is very rare to have a second act in a musical that is as rousing as the first. Usually gets a little deeper, but it's just not as watchable. And Rocky Horror Picture Show, the issue is they stop the plot. It is a nice Frankenstein alien movie for the first half, and then it is just a bunch of nonsense. Like I saw it like on stage in 2001 in New York with like Daphne Rubin Vega and Joan Jett and Dick Cavett, and it was just and they had no idea what to do with it. Also, the problem is with Rocky Horror, everybody, you know, if you've ever seen it live, people shout at the screen. That's part of the fun. They make fun of the movie. They make fun with the movie. That unfortunately happens at every stage production now. You cannot escape it, so you have to lean into it. It is so obnoxious.
You're right, because people are used to doing that when they go see it in the movie theater. That when they see it on stage, they would expect the same thing. Yeah, that's a good point. I never thought of that.
And like Tom Hewitt was playing Frankenfurter, and this is 2001, so this is a very 2001 joke. Somebody got the wrong audience participation line. They shouted it out loud, and then he turned and said, "You are the weakest link. Goodbye." Oh my God! I'm sorry. I'm a tangent heavy person. Other 70s movies I like.
Yeah,
Harold and Maude.
Starring Bud Cort. Yeah.
Starring Bud Cort. A Woman Under the Influence, the Cassavetes film. I adore Cassavetes because I like domestic dramas that rip my soul out.
Okay. And well, thank you for talking about Brewster McCloud, because the other film that came out that week in 1970 was Husbands by Cassavetes, which I have not watched yet. Have you seen that film?
Is
it good?
It's great. It's great.
Okay.
If you can handle it. I mean, that's right when he's getting into his his first couple films are studio films, and they don't quite feel like him. But this is him revving up to
A Woman Under the Influence.
Woman Under the Influence and Opening Night and all these in Faces.
Okay.
I've got the chronology all wrong, but the thing we know is Cassavetes starts around now.
Okay.
Very independent film.
I'm going to take a look at it.
I like Jesus Christ Superstar. Speaking of Norman Jewison, who made it right after he made Fiddler.
Okay. What year was that? Do you know what year that? I don't know that one.
What year is Fiddler?
Fiddler is 71.
I think this is 72 then.
72. Okay.
Carnal Knowledge, the Jules Pfeiffer movie.
Mike Nichols, right?
Mike Nichols directed it. Jules Pfeiffer wrote it. Jules Pfeiffer, who also wrote to the Altman film Popeye.
Okay.
Connections. I have a few more, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
Ralph Bakshi film Heavy Traffic.
I don't know that one.
A lot of people talk about like Fritz the Cat or his or Fire and Ice or Lord of the Rings. Heavy Traffic is a story of the 70s in New York City. It's very graphic, it's very adult, and it's like nothing I've ever seen before. I like The Warriors. Everybody loves The Warriors, and they should, because it's great.
Okay. Yeah.
All That Jazz is a big influence on me. Bob Fosse was a piece of garbage, and he made a movie about how much he's a piece of garbage. And then we just had the miniseries last year, Fosse Verdon, about how he's a piece of garbage. It was great. All That Jazz is, speaking of just ambition, and then finally The Harder They Come, the reggae crime thriller.
The Harder They Come.
By Jimmy Cliff. I Can See Clearly Now. Is from that. It's about a Jamaican man, and he's a criminal who uses those connections to make a music career for himself while he is still committing these crimes. If you watched it, you would see so many influences. It just had a high def re-release like 2-3 years ago.
Oh, cool.
But it's one of the greatest soundtracks of all time.
Oh, cool.
Because the actor is the musician. So those are my 70s. Yes.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Yeah, you gave me a couple titles there I have not seen. I'm excited to take a look. So let's talk about Brewster McCloud. I'm going to start with just a brief summary of what the movie's about, because I'm assuming most of our listeners probably haven't seen it. I had not heard of it until, a few weeks ago. Obviously very familiar with MASH, which was Robert Altman's other film released in 1970, much more successful film than this. But I wanted to kind of look at this, lesser known Altman release of 1970, which kind of blew my mind. I did not expect what happened on the screen, which we'll get to. So just in a very basic sense, you can add on to this if I'm forgetting. I'm sure I'm forgetting some stuff. This is just very basic summary. So Brewster McCloud is a young man played by Bud Cort, who would go on to be in Harold and Maude the following year. He lives in a fallout room in the Houston Astrodome, where he is trying to design a pair of wings that will help him achieve his dream of taking flight. He has a guardian angel, is what I kind of like a guardian angel named Louise, played by Sally Kellerman, who is also in MASH. She wants to help him fulfill that dream and also get in like a bathtub with him. I didn't understand that part. But then Brewster meets Suzanne, played by Shelley Duvall, in her feature film debut. She is a part-time race car driver and also a tour guide for the Dome, who they kind of have a meet cute and they kind of fall for each other a little bit. She might be able to keep him on the ground. So you're kind of like wondering where it's going to go in the second half, if he's going to kind of just go off with her or if he's still going to, pursue this crazy dream. And then meanwhile, there's like an investigation going on. There's a cop played by Michael Murphy. He's trying to solve the crime of why people are dropping dead with bird crap all over them, which happens like 4 or 5 times in this movie. And so as we get closer to the end, you wonder, is Brewster the cause of all these people dropping dead? Will he actually be able to take flight? And there's also a character called the Lecturer, who speaks to the viewer throughout the movie and slowly transforms into a bird. What did I leave out there, Marcus? Was that some of it?
It's not a movie you can synopsize very well. Yeah,
I didn't know how to do this one.
That is the structure. There's also Stacy Keach in old man makeup,
yes,
as a 99-year-old billionaire and who just steals money from people until he is murdered and thrown down the highway.
Jackass style,
and crashes next to Sally Kellerman, who like calls about like the Audubon Society, whatever. It's about
and what was Brewster's job there? He was just like his caretaker. Like what was he trying to do there?
I think he was just a chauffeur.
A chauffeur, just taking him around. Okay.
Yeah, it's just an odd job he has to, I guess, support his bird watching and bird photographing career, and also living in this literal fallout shelter in this domed building. And he thinks that the metaphor is there. He wants to create wings to fly out of something which he is entrapped in. This is we'll get there, but this is the most hippie movie.
Yeah,
I did not expect.
All right. So before we talk about just in general,
much else.
Before we talk in general about what we thought of it, I just have a few pieces of trivia about the movie. I don't know if you did any research or anything. Here's a few things I found out about it. So as I said, MASH was Altman's first movie of the year. That came out in January of 1970. Huge hit. Goes on to obviously inspire one of the most successful television series of all time, and was a big Oscar nominee of the year, got picture nomination, director nomination, and came out in January. When does that ever happen? I don't think that's like almost unheard of for a movie to open in January and then get Oscar nominations in the top categories the following year. But then Brewster McCloud came out in December, so you think Brewster would be the one that would be fresh on everyone's minds, but Brewster didn't get any major award nominations. It was not successful at the box office, so that was kind of interesting. According to IMDb, Altman hated the screenplay by Doran William Cannon so much he threw it out, and he would coach the actors as they shot this movie with lines of dialogue. Cannon later wrote an editorial in the New York Times calling the film shit.
This is from the screenwriter of Skidoo, so he can say whatever he wants.
So that's like, I guess maybe it happens more than I know of, but like just throwing the screenplay out, like, we don't need that. We can do this ourselves. It's like
this is something that Altman did nonstop.
Okay.
He believed that a script was just an obstacle.
Okay.
It is something he would use to get financed. And the second he got financed, he threw it out.
Really, for all of his major films, he would
not
throw
for all of them.
Okay.
Like certainly not Gosford Park, but
okay.
His 70s stuff is all very strange. Like Nashville, for instance, he was offered to direct a movie about Nashville, and he didn't want to do it, but he liked the setting, so he sent Joan Tewksbury out to Nashville to just live among the people and then write about them. And then they created that framework, and then the actors improvised all over it.
Yeah.
So and also another Shelley Duvall film, Three Women. He
Yep.
was on his way to the airport, and he had his friends stop over at MGM or whatever. It was probably MGM, where he's like, I can pitch this in 20 minutes. Watch. He goes in, out, comes out 20 minutes later. He has the financing for Three Women because he just told them the story. And then Sissy Spacek and Shelley Duvall and him just improvised all over this movie that was based off of a dream he had.
That's right. Yeah.
I miss this kind of cinema so much.
Mm-hmm.
It does not always work, but thank God they tried. That's all I ever want. Just surprise me. Ambitious failures.
Yeah, that's definitely what, Altman in the 1970s, as you said, it's like every year, right? He's making something, and there's so much like rich output from him that decade. And, I feel like, the 80s and 90s, we would have had even more if maybe he had a few more successful films, right? Because it took a while between the late 70s to The Player in 1992 for him to kind of come back on the scene in a really significant way.
Right, and then Shortcuts. And
Shortcuts,
then he built around
great.
For a while, and then Gosford Park, and his last movie is Prairie Home Companion.
Prairie Home Companion, yeah, 2006. I believe he died the same year that film was released.
Yes, yes. His backup director that the insurance made him have was Paul Thomas Anderson.
That's right, yeah.
And if you look at Brewster McCloud in Nashville, you see a lot of Paul Thomas Anderson.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Who is somebody I adore, except for one film of his that I want to give another chance to.
Okay.
Inherent Vice.
I'm the same way. Inherent Vice was rough.
It was
Inherent Vice. I went to the bathroom and I wasn't rushing to get back, which was very unusual for a Paul Thomas Anderson movie. I love most of his stuff. So a few more things. A single 70 millimeter print of Brewster McCloud was struck for its Houston Astrodome premiere on December 5th, 1970, in front of more than 23,000 people. Was the premiere of this movie. And by all accounts, it was a total disaster with terrible sound problems all the way through the movie.
Yes.
23,000 people watching a screen together.
And that movie specifically. Well, the Roland Emmerich Godzilla premiered at Madison Square Garden, for instance, and was also an unmitigated disaster. Regardless of the film's quality, which is kind of half of a fun movie, but if you see it at Madison Square Garden, it's at SIF, we do our opening night films at Macaw Opera Hall in Seattle, and that space is not really built for film. So unless you're in this specific square in the orchestra, the sound gets really echoey. So I can't even imagine at a domed sporting event center.
Yeah. With that many people.
And then watching this film that is using the Astrodome as this symbol for being trapped by society. How did they get away with that? Nobody cared in the 70s. Who went to the sports teams and whoever owns the stadium, the city, I guess, and said, hey, can we use this place? We'll be the first thing to ever film inside your dome that is not a sporting event. Can we make this anti-American story, technically?
Yeah. Exactly.
How? The balls on Altman. Oh my God.
Yeah, this is not a pro dome movie.
Good Lord. It's, and everything around it. I've never been to Houston. I like Texas. I've been to Texas. I've never been to Houston. Everything around the dome looks terrifying and desolate. What is he flying toward?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So a few more things. The original title was Brewster McCloud's Amazing Sexy Flying Machine.
Oh.
Which I kind of enjoy.
Me too.
But it doesn't fit so well on the poster, I guess. I don't know. Casting director Gary Chasson could not find a suitable actor to play the camera store clerk, so he just played the part himself, as casting directors do, right? I can't find the right actor. I will play this.
Yeah, did that ever happen at your old job?
No, I worked in casting for 2 years, and my boss, Valerie, she never cast herself in a movie. No, I never saw that happen. Maybe after I left, I don't know. But when I was there, it never happened. I was like, over the course of 2 years, I was like, maybe she'll cast me in something, like a little part. She's like, Brian, I can't find anyone for this little 2-line role in this independent film. I think you'd be the right. She never did that either.
Did you want to be one of the Oogie Loves?
Yes.
Because I know you technically worked on that.
Yes, I worked on the Oogie Loves for like 4 months on and off. Like this was a movie that people thought would be a big, like a huge success.
Yeah.
What if, what if we made a movie for 2 to 4 year olds where they could really participate with the movie on screen? I was in those meetings where they were, the producers and they were talking about this was going to revolutionize cinema. it was. One day I'll write the Oogie Loves tell all. I have some memories from that time. That was 2009. It was crazy. And then finally, this was, as I said, the film debut of Shelley Duvall. She was discovered in Texas. That's where she was living at the time. And then she would go on, of course, to work with Altman on many of his films. Her character's apartment in Brewster McCloud apparently features a poster for MASH. I did not see that.
No, right.
That was in the trivia notes. And then there's Margaret Hamilton. Which I think the final scene of Margaret Hamilton in this movie at the beginning might be one of the most insane minute and a half long moments in films I've seen in a long time. That's where I was like, what is happening in this movie? So what did we think of Brewster McCloud, Marcus? What was our take on this?
Oh, it is a giant mess, but it's actually I watched it. So the first time I watched it, I was a little stoned. Okay. Second time I watched it, I was very stoned and liked it a lot more. I think that's what he wanted.
Was this recently, or you had seen this movie? You hadn't seen this. Okay, so you watched it twice.
I watched it on Tuesday and I watched it on Thursday. Okay. I bought it on Prime. Well, and also it was out of print for 45 years. There was no way to watch this. Okay. And then Criterion just got a hold of it. I believe it was Criterion.
Yeah, I recorded it in July. Turner Classic Movies showed it in July, and
that's where I get most of my movies.
I recorded it on my DVR because I was like, oh, like anything that's like released in 1970, I was just recording. Just maybe I'll watch it at some point.
So yeah, this was not available. And then they showed it at the local rep house, Beacon Cinema, which just started a year ago. And
cool. Okay.
Had to. Well, it's not open right now. But luckily, the people.
But they did show it before it shut. Like they had screened this film. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. They're because there's not much of a rep. There aren't too many rep houses in Seattle. Unfortunately, repertory movies don't make a lot of money. That's the sad truth. Because we can watch them at home.
Yeah.
A lot of the time. Of course you should go see it. Like we have a Cinerama here, which actually temporarily closed long before the pandemic because it switched ownerships, and Paul Allen, the co-founder of Microsoft, died, and it was his baby. And that's where you want to see like 70. They have a 70 millimeter festival every year. It's how I saw Boogie Nights, for instance.
Okay.
It's how I saw not Dr. Zhivago. How I saw Patton. How I saw It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. Point is, Beacon did show this revival in their fairly small house.
Okay.
People were really about it, and it has a very Seattle feeling that is like unfortunately I cannot swear on this podcast because the theme of this movie is F the man. Society's stupid, all the rich people are greedy and old. They think they can take it with them. All the cops are fighting each other. Everybody is some kind of a bird. Let's see, I highlighted some stuff. It's all just insane. Super cops are peacocks,
and they're inept. Yeah, they're inept throughout this movie, right? They can never they're always on the case, but they never solve anything. Then it all erupts in like this never-ending car chase. It doesn't go anywhere.
Oh my god! Yeah. Okay, and we can jump ahead to that. I am so with this film. The Godardian Fellini-esque chaotic energy of doing whatever you want as long as the scene needs that theme, and then forgetting it the next scene is really fun to watch because I'll watch a bad movie. Nothing's wrong with a bad movie. The thing I don't like is boredom. And Brewster McCloud is not a boring film.
No.
But both times I watched this film, it got to the car chase and I lost focus, and then it was suddenly over.
So, and it ends a couple times too. I thought I've been trying not to give away the ending like on the podcast, but it's going to be hard to not talk about that last scene of this movie.
Please, spoiler
alert. We got to talk about the ending of this movie. There's no way we can get to the end of this episode without talking about the last 2-3 minutes of this.
I understand the themes of Rene Auberjonois, or however you pronounce his name, the guy
Okay,
from
yeah.
Deep Space Nine, Chef Louis from Little Mermaid, that guy,
Hmm.
first cow guy. He's telling us that humans are like birds, but I guess these birds don't have wings, and they had to create their wings and to fly out. Because okay, they're caged. I get
Hmm.
that. Cool.
Yep.
Like the Margaret Sullivan scene after she berates a bunch of black people because she is the opera singer who sings the national anthem at every single sporting event is
Yeah.
what they tell
And
us.
it's like the most shrill version I've like heard of that.
Right,
So,
the black orchestra and the cheerleaders hear the black national hymn and then start dancing. It tells them to shut the hell up. I
mhm.
bought your uniforms. You should do your thing. And then she's killed 10 minutes later by saying a really foul word to a black bird,
Yeah.
which then opens up the cage and then kills her. And then there's some crap all over her.
Yeah. So I mean that scene, I mean, I was like, what am I watching here? What is this about?
Wild.
Who's the it's we get Margaret Hamilton from The Wizard of Oz, Wicked Witch of the Wizard of Oz, and
Oh, I said
yeah,
Sullivan. That was my fault.
oh, yeah, Margaret Hamilton from Wizard of
Yes.
Oz. She plays the Wicked Witch. She looks at this bird on top of this giant cage and calls it the N-word. And then the bird like knocks the cage over on top of her and kills her. And then the camera zooms in on her shoes, which look like the ruby slippers from Wizard of Oz. And then bird crap falls on the shoes.
And you can
And
hear
I'm
the
like,
score doing, yeah. And then the score is doing a little bit of Somewhere Over the Rainbow.
that's when I said, okay, I don't know where this is going. I'm on board. This is not what I expected. And as you said, apart from some moments in the car chase, even though this movie didn't quite work all the way for me, like it's never
No.
boring and it's worth a look if you like the work, if you like Altman's films and you've somehow missed this one. What a cast, right? Like a
It's a
great
great
cast in this
cast.
movie. Bud Cort's really fun in the lead. And then Shelley Duvall, she is confident as ever. This is like one of her most like Duvallist, Shelley Duvall performances. Like she is just crazy and eccentric from minute one, and she's great in this. I wanted Sally Kellerman. I wanted her to have more to do. She's always just kind of like sitting in the corner and smiling. It's like, okay,
Right. So,
you know,
so yeah. Let's read it this way.
yeah,
It is like it's the story of Job. God is sending down. God and the devil are fighting over somebody, but this time
mhm,
God is sending down an angel. That is Sally Kellerman. That is
yep,
Louise, who, but is oddly represented by the bird. I don't know if it's a raven or a crow that lives in the Astrodome
mhm,
with Brewster. And she is giving him the way to transcendence. She is giving him the truth, but it can only be her truth. So in that way, are we reading this as this just one type of religious doctrine that
mhm.
he ends up rejecting? During the end credits, she is holding a snake. So I
Okay,
don't know.
my recording cut out. It did not
Oh,
record. It got to announcing like four of the cast names at like the circus, and Shelley Duvall is like has her face is all made up, and then
right.
it stopped recording. I was like,
Oh no.
oh,
Oh no. I know there's only like 30 seconds left. I would strongly recommend
try to
watching
find it.
the last 30 seconds because it's rentable on Amazon,
Okay,
in HD.
so do you see Bud Cort again?
Yes,
Oh, you
it
do.
is the
Okay.
last shot and it is vicious.
Okay, yeah, I will look that
But
up.
but
Yeah.
so Sally Kellerman, she's like, you have to focus only on this. You have to study. You have to make your body as strong as possible. You can't have sex with anybody. You can maybe have sex with me. And she is giving him these very strict rules that he decides to break. And she is fine with him murdering people.
Hmm.
There's really no reason for them to not tell us he's a murderer because it's clear pretty quickly. It's
Hmm.
definitely clear at the zoo.
Oh
And
yeah.
so I thought about this in comparison to he's kind of a Travis Bickle type. He is
Mm.
killing all these awful people, but he's doing it so passively that it doesn't really register.
Hmm.
He doesn't really have a purpose other than these people are annoying. And yeah, like this is the most 70s thing possible. It's like, yeah, damn the man, I'm gonna kill this person, kill that person. I got help on my side. As long as I get away with it and stay away from cops, I'm gonna be great. I'm gonna fly away, mofo.
Yeah, it's a kind of like almost like an early form of Carrie, right? This idea of almost like I can work with my mind. This bird is going to kill you if you say anything nasty to me or annoy me or in any way. The next scene, you're going to be dead on the ground with white crap all over you.
Right. And like what makes Sally Kellerman leave is that he has sex with Shelley Duvall, and then
Yeah.
he tells her that Louise was wrong, and she's like, "Oh no, it's all over." And then she literally takes the bird that is kind of her eyes and walks out of the stadium very
Mhm.
slowly, and it all closes behind him, and he's about to, Shelley Duvall has turned on him, which is another thing that could have been handled better.
Mhm.
So, like, what to go back to the car chase. So
Yeah.
after the car chase, suddenly a story appears, and they rush through the entire story
Mm.
in about 10 minutes.
Mhm.
So, and this is so Robert Altman has a very naturalist way of shooting things. He is a stylist, but
Mhm.
he's like, here you go, zoom. Okay, talk over each other. It's fine. It renders a lot of stuff emotionless, and I'm a very emotional viewer. I am an emotional viewer first. This explains why I love musicals, why I love horror. These are things
Mm.
that are very direct.
Yeah.
Um, and animated films as well. I think they're all basically the same genre in my opinion because they all push the same buttons and they accentuate things. Altman doesn't like to accentuate stuff. He likes to let weird things happen. He
Mhm.
lets, especially this movie, he likes to let you figure out the clues.
Yeah.
Um, but so Shelley Duvall, once he reveals that he might be the killer, she goes to her connected boyfriend and
Mhm.
then gives him up, and
Yeah.
then kind of runs away and then has sex with another dude.
Mhm.
I don't want to say this because I don't think Altman believes this, but this movie really hates women.
Mm. Yeah, no, I had the same thought. There was, Shelley Duvall. I thought, okay, this might be a little bit more of a three-dimensional character. She'll kind of stay with Brewster to the end, and then she kind of turns on him. And as you said, she's like making out with this other guy in his car, and it's like, wait, where was this switch? Like, I was struggling with the motivation from her character, and I wasn't quite sure why she
Yeah.
made that switch so quickly.
It's well. Here's the thing. I've been watching a lot of these movies with my wife, who is not that big on Altman. She really likes structure.
Okay.
She teaches English at, on a college level,
Oh, great.
and writing and theater and
Hmm.
stuff like that. And every time we finish an Altman movie, she's like, "That was way too long." And this is
That's
the
her first thing
one
she said.
this is the one Altman movie that is only like an hour 40 and it
Yep.
doesn't feel too long. So the things we're asking for would make it so much longer. Like we watched Nashville this week, her first time, which is 2 hours and 40 minutes long.
Oh,
And
wow, it's that long.
that's the shortcut. He was originally going to, that was not meant to be a pun. He was originally going to split it into two different movies because he had so much footage. But here's the thing.
Oh.
If you take out the musical sequences, Nashville's like 35 minutes long.
Okay, so 2 hours of it is just musical. Okay.
Which is, I mean, and the music says something, and all the actors, he asked them to write their own songs. Keith Carradine won an Oscar for "I'm Easy."
Which
Um,
he wrote himself for the movie?
and
Oh, interesting.
that's my understanding.
Yeah.
And it says in the end credits, because I always stick around for the credits. It has the writer, and each of them
Yeah.
wrote or co-wrote.
Mhm.
Also, Gary Busey wrote a couple because he was going to play the Keith Carradine character,
Oh.
and then
Did,
didn't.
did they use his songs at all or no?
They
Oh,
used
they did.
they used two of his songs.
Hmm.
Because who the hell knows? As usual, here's the thing with Altman, we're going crazy. His naturalism kind of makes emotions fade away. That's
Hmm.
so his musical Nashville and his musical Popeye actually kind of work because he lets those writers do the job that he doesn't care to do. I don't think he doesn't know how to do it. Same with Prairie Home Companion,
Mm.
which my sister called good actors singing poorly. And Nashville and Popeye. He recorded the songs live, which is a mistake. Going
Okay.
back to Cats, that is a huge mistake because Cats and Les Mis both do this, and it renders them really hard to listen to.
So you think they should pre-record the songs and then
Absolutely.
lip sync it when they film it? Okay.
It depends. Like Nashville, that makes sense because it's very character based, and it's all, like I said, he's all about naturalism.
Hmm.
This is not why Tom Hooper does the on set recording of songs. It's just because he doesn't know how to direct musicals. Also, I mean, some people don't like lip syncing. I get it,
Hmm.
but I don't know where I was going with that.
Yeah, so you mentioned some of these other films that are a lot longer than Brewster McCloud. It's funny you were talking about that. I almost think this movie might have been more successful if it had been a musical, Brewster McCloud. Do you think like
Absolutely.
songs would have added to the emotion and the story? I think it would have like made the film a little bit more compelling because it's so kind of wild and crazy anyway. Why not, even if not a full-blown musical, maybe have some scenes where they're singing? It
Sure.
wouldn't have really I think after the Margaret Hamilton scenes, you're just like you're willing to go with it, and I think some songs might have helped this movie.
Well, here's the thing: there are like 5 or 6 songs by John Phillips that are telling the story, that are
Hmm.
lyrically helping us along with the stuff, with the story, with the character beats. and literally just have people mouthing over them
Hmm.
would have actually probably helped that. But
Okay.
also, Allman doesn't quite care if you get what he's talking about the first time. He wants you to watch it a second time.
Hmm.
And so the difference between the two viewings of this, a lot more was revealed, which is a big gamble for a filmmaker. I love when there are not Easter eggs, but things you can
Mm-hmm.
find revealed, but that it has to be compelling enough to want to watch it a second time.
Hmm. Yeah. So what kind of revealed itself more in the second half or the second viewing that you had? Like when you watched it a second time, what kind of came to light that you hadn't noticed the first time?
Well, the first time I was confused about who's a bird, who isn't. Are they birds? Are they humans? Are there evolutions of birds? But then I transcribed the lecturer's
Okay.
opening monologue, which is has man truly realized his dream? We must isolate the dream. Was the dream to attain the ability to fly, or was the dream the freedom that true flight seemed to offer man? We might also touch on the mortal damage man is doing to birds' environment in comparison to the piddling nuisance bird causes man. It may someday be necessary to build enormous environmental enclosures to protect both man and birds. But if so, it is questionable whether man will allow birds in or out, as the case may be. What? I guess I get that. It reveals itself a little bit more. That is more about the idea between man and animal,
Hmm.
mortal and angel, grounded and flight. So I think the thing is the stoner that Robert Altman is and always was. He has these ideas, he taps on them, and then he runs off in another direction to the next idea. And if you get it, awesome. If not, cool. Like I'm sure David Lynch has seen this movie. David Lynch has clearly seen Three Women, which feels really Lynchian.
Yeah.
Where I don't think Allman wants to answer these questions. Neither does David Lynch. He wants you to do them. Your connections are going to be the fun part.
Hmm.
Um, so so I got to watch the anti-hero version of this more now that it revealed itself
Okay.
that, oh, Brewster was always this murderer.
Mm-hmm.
We just didn't see it for whatever freaking reason. So he is anti-establishment. That is all very clear. Are we supposed to like him? Who knows? If so, they failed. Um, which
Yeah,
is totally
he's
yeah,
not a very likable main
no,
character for a movie. Like I'm never like when he's outrunning that like overweight cop when he's like running around and there were moments of this movie I'm like, is this supposed to be like a slapstick comedy? I feel like this is like Robert Altman's version of a slapstick comedy because there are at least 5 or 6 moments in this movie that I feel like he's going for like a kind of a cheap laugh, right? With the way
yeah,
that some characters look, and especially that scene of Stacy Keach in old age makeup, as you said, that it reminded me of John Astin in The Frighteners, like
oh
that
wow,
really that crazy like old age makeup for no apparent reason. Because
right.
How old was Stacy Keach in
Uh,
1970? Like in his 30s,
who knows? Well,
like late.
the only thing I can come up with is they needed to have a young person for the stunt,
For the stuff.
for the wheelchair
And
stunt.
then like the way that the cars hit each other, it's almost like ill-timed, and that makes it funnier because it like they're kind of like, oh, we got to crash. It's not like a full-on really
Mhm.
car crash scene. But
Yeah,
like
it's
that I mean that scene of Bud Cort just running around and like hiding from the overweight cop and like the way that he runs, I'm like, are we supposed to be like giggling at this, or I wasn't
sure.
quite sure.
It's it is it. So to answer your question, it is a slapstick movie during those scenes.
Yeah,
Later on, it's not.
and then it's not. Yeah.
Another thing I noticed, so like if we're reading Louise as an angel, as a representative of a god,
Hmm.
we also learn later on that God is false, which is
Okay.
a big thing to quietly put in the movie when they go to the amusement park and they're on that Jungle Cruise
Uh-huh.
ride. Um, the tour guide points to like and there's our god, and it's just this plastic thing breathing fire. I'm
Hmm.
like, oh, okay, like you didn't need to like reiterate that Altman does not believe in God. I'm pretty certain I'd be surprised if he believed in God, but that solidifies he thinks God is fake, everybody's fake. And here is this anti-establishment character that is kind of a pain in the ass. He's bad to women. He has Hope, the woman who works at a healthcare store, the health food store, and
Yeah.
she's always bringing him stuff, and he's ignoring her. She's watching his body. She's dressed literally in a red, white, and blue dress, and she never gets to touch him, and he ignores her, but then she goes to a blanket and I guess services herself a couple times. So I guess I can read that as it is about Americans loving the idea of transgression or
Mhm.
revolution, but not actually following through on it because it'll never reach them.
Yeah.
And Brewster McCloud is a guy who burns the brightest, he fights the hardest, and here's the ending. He crashes and crashes hard.
Yeah, yeah. So let's talk about the ending. Like I thought, so much of it is kind of, slapstick comedy, kind of funny, but that ending is not funny, and it's like a really. I felt like that would have been a really striking kind of closing scene for a dramatic film. Like the way, I mean, he is really, really trying to fly at the end there,
And it's
and the way
lovely. And then you
and
hear
the
the
way it's put
song.
together, the way it's probably the best like directed shot scene in the movie, edited scene. Like the cuts are really well done, and you really get the sense that he's not. They're not like there's no like. I mean, it's 1970, so there wouldn't really be like a blue screen or green screen behind him for a movie like this. But you really get the sense that he's high up and he's trying, and he just keeps like getting louder and louder and louder until he drops to the ground, and it's like holy.
Right. And so the song right before he takes flight, the last line,
Yeah.
I watch everything on closed captions. This is
Okay.
the last of the unnatural acts. This is the last of the unnatural
Mm-hmm.
acts. So you can be unnatural if you're willing to, if you're able to do it. Like he builds himself up as the strongest this scrawny boy can be, but that is not enough. This man will never be able to break through, which is
Mm-hmm.
such a like I'm still not sure of the like. Yes, that is a clear theme, but is he telling us to try harder, to try in a different way? I don't think he knows. I'm not sure if he cares. He's just telling you a story about these anti-establishment people
Mm-hmm.
trying to fight the system that is already cannibalizing itself. But yeah, the flight is lovely, and you can even see the strings in high def. It's totally fine.
Okay.
I don't
Yeah.
care. I
It's
would
fine.
much rather see strings than a green screen.
Yeah. Exactly.
Um, and then he crashes, and I'm so sorry that your DVR cut out because my favorite scene is the last scene of the movie, the circus scene. And so
Oh,
it
okay. So here's the deal. When they started like calling like doing like a curtain call for the actors, I was already kind of checked out at that point. So when it didn't upset me that the DVR cut out with a minute or two to go, because I've seen that done in a couple other movies. I don't like that like
oh
breaking the fourth wall. I've never liked that, and especially because of the power of him hitting the ground, I thought was so great. And then for the circus and the cheering, and then presenting Shelley Duvall, and I'm like,
yeah.
I was like, oh, okay, it's over.
And
So you like that last part?
well,
That kind of
I'm a theater guy. It's a
okay,
curtain call.
yeah,
And the thing is, if God is an artifice, society is artificial, so is film.
yeah,
So it opens with Jimmy Stewart instead of the over the MGM lion.
yeah, and
It's
there's no roar, right?
it's no
There's
roar.
no animal roar.
It's Jimmy Stewart going, I forgot the opening line. He tells you immediately that film is artificial. He's going to do the best he can.
Mhm.
So you can also read this movie as this is what he thinks of film at its current stage in 1970.
Okay,
But yeah, everybody comes out. So like Brewster McCloud dies. He crashes
yeah, he's
super
dead.
fucking hard, and it's terrifying.
Mhm.
And then Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey come out, the greatest show on earth, and then every character's like it has a representational character in the circus. Like the super cop is the lion tamer.
Mhm.
Hope is Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz. Shelley Duvall is a clown. Um, and then oh, so you don't get to the big joke. So it's so Stacey Keach inside of his mask, and then it says and Margaret Hamilton, and she's a woman standing behind a flagpole that you can't see her face. Clearly, Margaret Hamilton did not show up. So
Okay,
old Hollywood said F this.
yeah.
And then it goes through everything, and then it says, and finally, Bud Cort, and it cuts to him dead on the ground, crumpled in a heap.
Oh,
And
okay.
then it
So
cuts to black.
he doesn't get up. Like
He
he's
does
just
not get
dead.
up. It's like, ha ha ha, life is a circus, the world is a circus. He's dead.
Okay,
So
interesting.
literally, the last shot of the movie is the most vicious part of the entire film. It's
Okay,
like,
and like
look at this.
there's no music, there's no cheering. It just goes quiet to him dead.
Like they're playing circus music, and then it says, and finally, Bud Cort, cut to him dead on the ground, and then it cuts to black and end credits. And I don't
Mhm.
think there's any music under the end credits. I could be
Interesting.
wrong, but there shouldn't be.
So let's go back to that car chase. There were two parts of it that just kind of like blew my mind. One was we see four cars go up into the air in the same shot, and it goes on and on and on. And I was questioning watching. I'm like, what is he going for here? Is this supposed to make me laugh? The part of that car chase that made me laugh really loud was when Michael Murphy's car hits that body of water, and then it kept cutting to other moments, and then it would cut back to the slow motion of the car continuing to submerge in the water. And then so I'm laughing, and then he kills himself. And then I stop laughing.
Well,
so I'm like, what do you want? What's the reaction you want from me, Mr. Altman here? I don't know what to think.
Well, because the Super Cop failed. So this comes out 2 years. This comes out 2 years after Bullet. I think his character, whatever Shaft, is very intentionally Bullet plus, I guess, Shaft.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't know when Shaft came out, but I know this comes out 2 years after Bullet, and it's very intentional that Michael Murphy is playing a Steve McQueen Super Cop type, and he has failed, so I guess he's got to kill himself. Why not? I don't know.
we really see that failure with the just constant cutting back. I think it does it 5 times. And into the same slow motion shot of the car. And it's so, like, what's happening here? This is a deliberate editing choice.
Right. And the start of that chase is really fun because Sally Kellerman keeps messing with the cops outside the amusement park, getting in her car, out of her car. Yeah. It reminds me of there's a car chase in Christopher McQuarrie's The Way of the Gun with Ryan Phillippe and Benicio del Toro, and the chase is actually them like trying to psych out the cops by sticking their foot out the car and pretending to get out, and then the car's going slower and slower and slower, and they're waiting for the cop behind them to get out, and then they'll drive ahead. And so all the Sally Kellerman stuff of her messing with the chase is very fun, and it fits with her character. The rest is just B-movie nonsense because Altman felt like it, and God bless him. And I know it's cliche to say things like this are like a Godard film, but like I just rewatched Breathless, I just rewatched Weekend, and those are just whatever idea he had at the time. If it's casual violence or slapstick or like a weird like characters from like history who should be dead for hundreds of years suddenly appear, they state their purpose, and then it moves on. And so this is definitely him feeling out like the new wave stuff that was happening earlier in France, and then influencing American films, say like Bonnie and Clyde, which is intentionally based on the French New Wave, to the point that they want Truffaut to direct it.
Yeah, and I've always admired that about a filmmaker who, it's okay if he fails here and there, trying new things, not just doing the same movie over and over. Make a film every year, every 2 years, and maybe every 3 of them doesn't work, but it's okay. It's like if they're trying something new and different, if it fails, it fails, and just keep making, obviously make enough successes so you can keep making films. I think if you fail enough, they won't let you make any more.
70s were a wild world. I mean, I don't venerate the 70s like everybody. It's like a lot of things came together to make the 70s in cinema happen. But the thing is, any decade that would follow the dissolution of the Hays Code, the movie production code, which was from 1934 to 68. Anything following the motion picture code being dissolved would be an interesting decade. If this happened in 1958, the 60s would be wonderful. But the 70s also has the counterculture. It has the hippies. It has the Vietnam War. It has Nixon. It has us. It has a bicentennial. It's us figuring out who we are as a country, which would not have been happening in the 60s, in the early 60s, in quite the same way. But this is when cinema could be this weird. It's not like it's a bunch of weirdos who like said screw the system. Yes, their initial films were like that, but major studios looked at the money. They looked at, say, Easy Rider, which was a mega hit, and they started making those movies. They were just saying, do you have an idea? Could it make us some money? Fine, do whatever you want, which hasn't happened. Like it happened again in like the early 90s with independent cinema, which became Miramax, which became Disney, and then it all disappeared. So now you can only see those films in film festivals or on streaming sites. So it's not like MGM,
which is
like,
unfortunate.
Which is very unfortunate.
I wish we had more of that.
The system needs
in
to
the
break.
theater.
Yeah, and it's only in film festivals. So like the best films I see in the year tend to come through the festival circuit.
Yeah, that must be frustrating for you to see some of these amazing films at your Seattle Film Festival, and then see them not go on to really be seen by very many people. It must be really frustrating.
It can be, but also they don't have to go through the system, and that can be nice. And they make money this way because we are paying for the rights to screen their films, and it is a negotiation. This is just one way to make money. But it's not like MGM was saying, "Hey, Altman, make this weird counterculture movie, go nuts." you can make references to La Strada all you want. You can make references to Wizard of Oz. It's all chaos. No, they saw that MASH was a giant hit and they gave him more money. I'm assuming that MASH was made by MGM. I don't know, but he was MGM for a long time.
Yeah, I tried to find out like when this was shot because MASH opened in January and then this opened in December. So I'm assuming that Brewster McCloud was probably filmed like spring summer of 70 would make sense. I don't think Brewster McCloud was shot before MASH was released. It makes sense to me that they would have, because MASH was a big hit, that they would have, given him the green light to, his next film, whatever it may be. He probably pitched it in a way, or probably sounded, more of like a straightforward narrative than it turned out to be. I don't know, but
yeah, and I don't think he had any fight in the edit bay. I do know that he says Nashville was the first movie he had complete control over.
Okay,
and that's 5 years later.
Wow. Okay, so
between then,
the thought that like he didn't have director's cut maybe over Brewster McCloud, like someone could have come in and tried to change it around. I don't know what that person would have done.
And I also don't know what he meant by that. Like he has a biography I'd love to read. It's basically where the unlocking happened, because I was a little resistant to doing an Altman film because I'm not huge on him, but actually that was like 18-year-old me. Now I sort of get it. But when you realize, when you learn how much of a pothead he was, his movies start to make more sense.
Okay.
So like for instance, for 20 years I've been saying, yeah, Altman is good, but his protege is Alan Rudolph, who I think makes better films.
Okay.
And yeah, like Welcome to LA or Affliction or Mrs. Parker and the Vicious Circle. He's very good at that. It's Altman stuff with a better structure.
Okay.
But now I'm like, why do I need this structure? So, but if you look at through these lenses, like there's a story that Altman, when he was nominated for Best Director, I think it was for MASH, it might have been for a later movie.
He was nominated for MASH, yeah.
He was at the Oscars, stoned out of his mind in the front row, and just giggling it the whole time because he knew he wasn't going to win and having a freaking blast. So Brewster McCloud is like talking to a stoner saying, yeah, America, man, it kind of sucks, and I'm going to show you these. It's really a sketch film. It's basically a Monty Python film, but less funny.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Because if you wait 5 minutes, it'll be a different film, which can be chaotic but also very fun. This is a weird comparison. I feel like Blumhouse movies do this a lot. Blumhouse movies have this like weird first draft energy that can be annoying or intoxicating depending on how you look at it, because it does not feel like, it feels like a couple people's ideas, not 800 people's ideas.
Yeah.
And
yeah, if Blumhouse movies, even the lesser ones, are usually worth watching because they're typically a director's vision. It's, as you say, it's not a bunch of people getting together and figuring out the movie. It's like, giving a little bit of money to somebody and say, you do what you want to do. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But that's what's so exciting about a lot of these 70s films, is that it's, the director's, like, it's the director's vision, and there's not a whole lot of interference from outside executives that you would go on to see in the 80s and later.
Right. And then the 80s, it became a very, it's cliche to say, but it's very corporate. Studios became a lot more corporate.
Yep.
And homogenized. It's worse now, but for the same reasons. And then smaller studios were allowed to break out in the late 80s. But yeah, so it, like a Blumhouse movie like this, if you don't like the movie you're watching, just wait 5 minutes.
Yeah.
It'll add up to something.
I would love to have seen that audience of 23,000 people with the scene of Margaret Hamilton calling that bird what she does, and then her death, and then the ruby slippers. I would like to know, was the reaction like laughter? Was it just dead silence? Like what was the reaction to that?
and then at the zoo, there's a narcotics officer who's just telling racist jokes to everybody for no reason, and then he tries to plant marijuana on him, and then Brewster looks up, and then bird droppings. Cut to next scene. Guy dead.
The thing about this movie, there were way too many scenes of like the cops and the detectives, and how many? What, 10 or more scenes of them that you don't see Bud Cort, you don't see Shelley Duvall or Sally Kellerman, and those scenes go on for a while, and you're like, I don't care. Like, this is like a weird, eccentric comedy. Why are we spending 20 plus minutes of it with these cop characters I don't really care about?
And he makes his point early on that cops are pigs. They argue over each other. It's all bureaucratic. There's 3 levels. And the only noble one is the traffic cop, the guy who played Herman Munster in the second Munsters television show. He's also he's an Altman actor, but I just know him as Herman Munster, post Fred Gwynn. And then there's the captain who just wants the political aspirations, and then there's super cop who doesn't listen to anybody but technically follows the right lead. None of it matters.
Yeah.
It's called Brewster McCloud. Brewster is barely in the movie.
Yeah, would you say he's in more than half of the movie? I mean, he's in, he's in I mean, we
He's
haven't
in a
talked about the
decent amount.
scene where he's in his undies just walking around. That was a surprise. I'm like, okay.
It's all if you just watch it as little flashes of inspiration,
Yeah.
then
But
you'll have a good time.
the whole, not so much.
Right. And yeah, Altman has a lot to say about America. It's usually the same thing. He said it in MASH.
Mhm.
Another Shelley Duvall film is she's in it for a couple scenes. Buffalo Bill and the Indians.
Okay, I don't know that one. That's Altman.
That is, yeah, it's Altman. It's
Okay.
Paul Newman is Buffalo Bill, and it's about the Wild
Okay.
West show, and them bringing in a Sitting Bull to make the Wild West show better. But the whole point, and he makes this for 2 freaking hours, is that this is all an artificial idea of what American history is. The white men are the murderers, and the indigenous people are not savages. They are the only noble people here. In
Mhm.
that movie, Shelley Duvall plays Grover Cleveland's wife, and they're
Okay.
on their honeymoon tour, and they want to see this show. So it is an Annie Oakley story, but it's from the perspective of Buffalo Bill, Paul Newman. Annie Oakley is Geraldine Chaplin,
Okay.
70s
Interesting.
actress.
Yeah.
And it's actually not a very good movie.
Okay.
But the player is about how the system sucks.
Mhm.
Shortcuts is about how LA is full of crap.
LA's.
Gosford Park is that rich people are stupid.
Mhm.
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
all he ever did.
I mean, there are random scenes in many of his films, but he's usually saying something, right? Robert
Yeah.
Altman didn't make very many films where he had nothing to say and he was just telling
Oh
a
no.
story, right? He always had something going on
He
behind
is
the scenes.
he has themes here.
Hmm.
So they just punch up against each other and fly off like fireworks. And if you have to choose one or two and follow them, and then the next time you can look for, like, it's like a video game where the choice-based video games where you affect the narrative.
Hmm.
The second time you watch, you can take this route and make your character do bad things or not figure out this mystery.
Yeah, because like when he takes flight at the end, I said, okay, there's like an optimistic kind of theme message here, like go after your dream no matter what, and you
Yeah.
will achieve it. And then, and I'm like,
But
wait, no, that's not the theme.
but here's the problem. The one thing I knew about this movie was the ending.
Oh, you were aware of the how the movie ends before you
Yes.
watched it the first time. Okay.
Yeah.
Where did you? I had never heard of this movie before. Where did you had someone and had talked to you about it?
Just around.
Just around.
It's brought up a lot. Well, because I like Bug Court specifically because of Harold and Maude. It's a
Yeah.
very important film to my childhood. I know my mom adored it. I've seen
Hmm.
it in I saw it in film school. I've seen it in theaters. I watched it
Hmm.
with friends. It's a different experience every time.
Yeah.
I don't know how I knew. It's just like that is the one thing. Like the image of him with the wings is the poster.
Hmm.
And then the tagline is something else from the director of MASH. It sure is something else. You're right.
Yeah,
And
because the
I
movie.
like it more than MASH too.
Okay, yeah, the movie has like 2 or 3 endings when there's that long shot of Sally Kellerman walking with the bird on her shoulder. Was that
Yeah.
go on for a minute long? And the music's playing, and I'm like, really? This is how it's going to end? We don't even get to see if he flies or not. So I was just so thankful when it cut to the next. So I was like, okay,
Right.
good. That's not the end. But there
Well,
were like 3 moments where I thought it was over, and oh nope, there's more.
and he's giving you, like, read it this way. He's giving you like 3 endings. Like
Mm.
there's like the tragic ending, there is the Hollywood ending, and then there's the real life naturalist ending where nothing matters and everything's a circus. He is telling you about the artificiality of film, the
Yeah,
artificiality of studio cinema, the artificiality of America. And the movie starts 3 times as well. It starts with the lecturer who,
lecturer.
as you say, becomes a bird throughout the movie, which is wonderful. And then Margaret Hamilton starts singing the Star Spangled Banner and then stops it, and then she yells at everybody, and then it pans up again. So we start the film 3 different times.
You're right. Yeah. So it kind of does the same thing at the beginning and then at the end. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not the most focused structure of some of his other.
No, this is a very unfocused movie.
Yeah.
But like I said, that's also what I quite like about it, and it's actually, I think, one of my favorite Altman films at this point because it's just so barking mad.
Yeah, and there are some great lines. I wrote down a couple. Shelley Duvall turns to Cort. She says, "Have you ever gotten diarrhea from eating Mexican food before?"
Right. Oh, there's a line I actually didn't understand. I got so scared I sorted rats in my new dress. Does that mean what I think it does? Because I've never heard that idiom before. It means she soiled herself, I guess, but what does that mean? But and so the only time the cop stuff works is when they are making fun of cops.
Okay.
There's a conversation, it's in the trailer too. They say there's only one way to tell. Send it to the lab. Oh, because he's about to like sniff it or eat it.
Yeah.
Like, that's the only way they can tell that this is bird crap. How can you tell? Send it to the lab. Oh, gotcha. Yeah. Cool.
I also like when Brewster asks, what's Shelley Duvall's name again?
Suzanne.
When she asks him, where do you live? And he says, I live in the dome in a room.
Thank
that
you.
got a laugh. I like that line. Like, she's like, oh, okay.
Barking mad.
Just a crazy movie. I'm trying to think, are there any other scenes we like that we haven't touched on? I feel like we've talked about most of them. Anything else that we haven't touched on with the movie that we liked or thought was crazy?
I'm looking for the chaotic notes I took during my second.
Yeah, I took some notes. I try to take a couple pages of notes, just things that I notice. I've talked about pretty much everything. I did say I feel like there's not a script to this movie, and I was kind of right.
What's new? I know when so Jules Feiffer wrote Popeye. Jules Feiffer, who's a screenwriter but also a cartoonist. He also wrote Carnal Knowledge. And Altman was not immediately attached. And then when he heard his buddy Altman was attached, he's like, oh God, I love the man, but this is going to be crazy because I know he does not have fidelity to the script.
Mm-hmm. Have you seen his follow up to this, McCabe and Mrs. Miller?
Yes.
Because I saw it, I think, briefly when I was much younger. I don't remember it very well, but my memory is that film has a little bit more like dramatic structure, right?
It does. This film. Oh God, yes, and it is probably his best film. I have a friend who he's a critic, and it's his favorite film. He watched it like 8 times last year.
Oh, okay.
And he adores it. When I watched it just recently because Shelley Duvall plays a mail order bride in it, and when her husband dies, she joins the brothel in the film.
Okay.
It's a very strong film, and it has his anti-capitalist message. It is the strongest of his anti-capital films. Wonderful film. And the laid back quality of its storytelling benefits it because he's telling us, a story of the West, or it's the Dakotas, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And the easygoing stoner quality lets you groove with these characters because they are not living in a modern society. They're living in a slow society, trying to create society. It is, about a huckster and a madam building each other up until capitalism gets in the way and attempts to destroy everything.
Okay.
And its connection to religion. There's a lot going on in McCabe.
Because that film came out in June of 1971. So in the course of about 18 months, he had 3 films come out, which is crazy.
And they built an entire village for that entire town for that movie. None of that was there before. So and he had everybody live on set, which is super annoying, but also creates good results because it does not seem like Altman believes in the method.
Okay. Do you think he made Bud Cort live in that dome?
No, I don't think for that. I do know that Shelley Duvall had never left Texas when he discovered her.
Yeah.
She was just a nice Texan girl, and you can see from her later films she starts to for 10 years she looks like this weird alien model-esque figure, and then later on she starts to look like a Texan woman again, just like a normal human being.
And fairy tale theater.
Yeah. Well, I watched most of her films.
I'm Shelley Duvall.
Yeah. Well, and she produced that. She produced there was a spinoff that was Tall Tales, and I haven't seen those since they were on, so I don't remember any of them because they ended when I was like 6.
Yeah. So let's before we get to our last segment, what did we think of Shelley Duvall in her film debut? Did you admire her performance? Did you like her presence in this movie?
I did. I think later on, this is controversial. I don't think she's much of an actress, but she's a natural talent.
I've always enjoyed her when she pops up in a movie. Like I remember a few years ago, I watched The Portrait of a Lady for the first time, starring Nicole Kidman, and Shelley Duvall shows up, and I was like, I got really happy. That she's one of the actors that does that for me. Like I see her in like Madeline Kahn's another one. Like when they pop up in a movie, even if it's for a scene or two, like I get very happy.
Yeah, that person for me is Carol Kane.
Carol Kane, yeah,
my favorite actress. But here, Shelley's a very natural talent. She's very loose. She's very present. This sounds like an insult, but it's not. It seems very unstudied.
Yeah.
So that's why when she's bad, she's really bad, and when she's good, she's really good. And unfortunately, her best performance is Stanley Kubrick torturing her for an entire year.
Yeah,
And
which we
it's
will
out.
get to.
We will get to that. She's a breath of fresh air in this movie because
Mhm.
every other woman is either an angel or like a dingbat or
Yeah.
a racist,
Yeah.
and none of it adds up to
Yeah. She's
much.
the best female character in Brewster
Oh yeah,
McCloud.
she's the only female character in
Yeah.
Brewster McCloud. The rest are stereotypes.
Yeah, exactly.
And she comes on. She looks crazy in the best way,
Mhm.
and she is both like an usher and a part-time race car driver. Because why not?
Yeah.
It is like it's Altman's version of a manic pixie dream girl in
Mhm.
1970.
Yep.
And she really lightens up the mood because Bud Cort's just moping throughout the entire movie, and it's just not that fun to watch. And she goes like, "Hey, let's do crazy stuff. Let's get in. Let's go. Let's have sex. Let's get in a car crash." And like they are making her seem like she is sin, she is temptation, but you never feel that way. She's like, "Are you trying to steal my car?" Like, oh, cool. Yeah. Oh, I don't mind.
Yeah, when I
What's
saw
going
that
on?
this was her film debut, sometimes, if it's a film debut, it's somebody with just a few scenes. Like she plays a significant role in this movie for someone who's just like newly discovered, put in her first film, introducing Shelley Duvall. This is a pretty solid performance and a lot of
Yeah.
screen time that she gets in this.
Yeah. It is a great movie to debut in, even if this is not like the most
Mhm.
critically liked or
Yeah.
successful film of Altman's career. She kept on showing up in his stuff, but
Mhm.
most of her watching her films, most of her films she only has one or two scenes.
Mm.
There's like
Yep.
5 where she's a major part, and the rest she's just sort of a cameo.
Yeah. Would you say her biggest role? I mean, I guess she's in a lot of The Shining, but Three Women, right? She's kind of like the lead of that. She won the Best Actress at the Cannes Film Festival for
Mm-hmm.
Three Women. That's maybe like her biggest role in a film.
Popeye.
Oh, Popeye.
I would say Popeye.
Why does Popeye? I just that movie. I've seen it. It's fine. It's not one I really think about very much when I think of Shelley Duvall. When I think of Robin Williams or Robert Altman, I think of other films than that one.
Well, sure. Well, it was Robin Williams' first film,
Yep.
and you
Speaking
can
of
kind of
debuts. Yep.
tell. He was mumbling so much they had to ADR all of his stuff. The songs were recorded live on set, so nothing really
Yeah,
works.
but he was famous by 1980, right?
Oh
Because
yeah,
of
as a
Mork
stand-up.
and Mindy. When did that premiere? In the late 70s, right?
Sure, it was. Yeah, it was.
He was a known
Yeah,
person, whereas Shelley Duvall in 1970, nobody knew who she was. So that was kind of like a unique circumstance where Robin Williams is making his film debut in a movie that's like the main character, but audiences, at least for him, like they already kind of knew of him and his work.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, to answer your question, I like her quite a bit in this movie. She works exactly for what her character needs to
Mm-hmm.
be, and I don't think he had to direct her very much. She doesn't seem to really need direction
Mm-hmm.
or take direction, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's not super stiff. Like even if there wasn't a lot of like, using the screenplay, a lot of just coaching from Altman, like she does a good job. She creates a character who is memorable as a part of this ensemble. And
Yeah,
yeah, she does a good job for her very first movie. Sometimes a debut performance, sometimes it takes like 5 years for them to really get like
yeah.
natural on screen,
Especially
but she's really good right up from the beginning.
especially for like an it girl.
Yeah.
It usually takes a while, and usually you don't have the luxury of 5 years to find that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So my last question about the movie, I ask each of my guests is, looking at this film through a 2020 lens, we've talked about a little bit, anything specifically that makes this, 1970 versus like if this were to be made today, this same story, like by a different director, how do you think it would be different? The 50-year kind of span of time here, how like what does that do to this movie in terms of thinking about it in terms of is it dated at all, or like how would it be different now?
I think if it was made now, it would be a lot more structured and less interesting.
Less
They
interesting.
would
Yeah, yeah.
focus it.
Hmm.
But I'm more interested in like it actually reads beautifully now, probably better than it did in
Then
1970.
did
Because in the
1970.
70s, the counterculture is still revving up. Like the thing we know is the 60s is the late 60s and early 70s.
Hmm.
Nowadays, like especially this year specifically, the whole F the man, F society, F bureaucracy. This is all very clear. I'm not saying that any of the last 50 years it wouldn't have worked just as well, but this year is the year of protest. It is upheaval. It is looking at the 21st century Nixon straight in the face.
Mm-hmm.
And we would have the same reactions. We would approach the story differently. We would approach what it's saying differently, but it reads beautifully now.
Mm-hmm.
We don't really watch films in this chaotic way anymore. So it will be, unless you're in for the ride, it's going to be really obnoxious, and that's okay. A movie for everybody is a boring film. If we all agreed on it, if we all agreed on everything, life would be so boring.
Yeah, it goes for, novelists and filmmakers. If you're trying to please everybody, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
Like, you have to do what compels you.
Well, first of all, this movie would never get made because MGM doesn't really make movies anymore. They are Sony.
I don't think the Margaret Hamilton scenes would be in the new version.
No. All the epithets would be gone. They would make it very clear who Louise was. They would. It would feel like in adaptation, the movie that Donald Kaufman is writing, the Three. It would feel like that. The crappy thriller that he gets him a lot of money.
The successful of the two screenwriters and adaptation.
Wild.
I don't think they would remake this. I don't think they would do this story again.
But we just sort of accidentally backed into it. The one person I'd want to make it would be Charlie Kaufman.
Oh my gosh, could you imagine if Charlie Kaufman got his hands on this material? That would be an interesting film.
Because it's basically the same thematic content, and he also has the same "I don't understand women" problem. I love his films, but man, he puts a lot of emphasis on woe is man next to the confusion that is women to him.
Oh, I haven't seen his new movie. It's like I keep meaning to watch it. Have you seen the new one?
I would say it's very similar to this one.
Okay.
I'm thinking of Ending Things.
I'm thinking of Ending Things. Yeah.
It is. Unless you're in for the ride, it will be the most obnoxious viewing of the year for you.
Okay.
Until it hasn't come out yet, but probably Hillbilly Elegy, which I hear is risible.
Yeah, I've like the trailer. I couldn't tell. Like, is this going to be a great film or is this going to be a
no
disaster?
It's going to be bad. Let's see what happens. And this isn't always true, but I do say Netflix is where directors go to make their worst films.
Okay.
It's not always true.
Yeah. I feel like they don't have to edit them as much, right? Isn't like
not at all.
Like the Kissing Booth 2 isn't like 2 hours and 20 minutes or something like that.
God.
I'm like, why is this movie longer than 90 minutes?
Going back to Jingle Jangle, it was 2 hours long. Why? It had an hour-long first act. And it's weird because we're talking about.
You think like some of these films made for Netflix, if they were going to theaters, they would be a little bit more strict on cutting things down?
Well, Netflix doesn't care. They just want content.
Yeah.
So I don't think they would speak up. If it was a different studio, then they would speak up. I know we're saying, oh, look at the 70s where they just gave money and said, here, have full control. But now we're seeing the streaming version of that, and it makes for a lot of three out of 5 star cinema at best.
Yeah. So we're talking about some newer movies. Let's kind of move away from Brewster McCloud to our final 2 segments now. The first one I'm calling the Divine Double Feature, where we pick a more modern film, a contemporary film that you think might be kind of an interesting movie to watch directly after Brewster McCloud. What film did you come up with for that?
I had 4, but I'll focus on one. Here,
you can mention the other ones if you have like just one to choose.
If we're speaking of rebellion, then there's this Swedish movie from 7 years ago called We Are the Best.
Okay.
Which is based off a graphic novel. It is about 3 middle school girls who start a punk band because they just don't want to play soccer in gym class. And that's the nice character-based, very, very sweet, soft version of a rebellious story, because it's like a little bit sort of like 8 Mile, but better. Because 8 Mile, he goes from rags to slightly better rags, to quote Roger Ebert. If we're talking about if you read Brewster McCloud as this is an uncaring world, you cannot break out of it no matter how hard you try. The best people about that are the Coen brothers.
Okay.
And A Serious Man is
Great
their movie that says that the most clearly. No matter what you do, the world does not give a crap. And I know people think their movies are nihilistic. I don't think they are. I think they're pragmatic. But they do make fun of humanity, and I enjoy that. They also are my favorite filmmakers, so I cannot be objective about them. Yeah. If you want to a horror movie about transgression, it is the French film Raw from a few years ago.
I don't know that one. Raw?
Raw, but RAW by Julia Ducournau. I'm surprised you haven't seen it
You
because
are
you are the
telling me
horror
all
person.
you're telling me all sorts of amazing titles that I have to get to.
Please
Raw.
watch Raw because
Yeah.
I know you
What
like
year was
horror.
that?
2017, I think.
2017 from France, you said?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I
And
follow a lot of horror blogs and I try to keep up. I'm not aware of that one.
well, it was notorious for people passing out at the screening, which is always kind of a
Okay.
lie. But and it's also, I know the scene they're talking about. It is about she's a young adult and she's going to veterinary school. She's a vegetarian,
Hmm.
but then during a hazing ceremony, they force her to eat meat, and she
Oh,
gets a taste for human flesh.
interesting.
It's one of the great horror movies directed by women are where we should be putting a lot of focus right now.
Absolutely.
And here is this one. This is a big one. Revenge is another big
Mhm.
one from
I loved Revenge. I saw that.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. Another SIF film that was a midnighter for us. It was
That was
I sat
that was a SIF premiere,
no, it was
but
like a
it played
Toronto
but it
premiere.
played at your festival. That's
Yeah,
fantastic. Yeah.
I watched it on my laptop in the office, and then when we programmed it, I sat in the back row to watch
Oh my
everybody.
gosh. I saw it by myself at home. I was like, "Oh, this would be so great in a crowded theater."
It was crazy. I was just waiting. So
Raw.
Raw is about trying to transgress God.
Do you know where that's streaming anywhere? Raw?
Um, I'm sure a bunch of places, but here,
Okay.
let me.
I'll find it. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, it's fairly well known. Like
Okay.
it was the like what's the French New Extremity? It's one of those.
Okay. I'll check it out.
And here's one about accepting God. It is called Paths of the Soul. It is a Chinese Tibetan film. It is sort of a documentary, but it's sort of not. It's about villagers making the 1,200-kilometer pilgrimage from their village to Lhasa up in the
Okay.
mountains. And every few feet, they get on the ground, they put their forehead down, they prostrate. And it's about that journey of 11 people. It's a family. One of them is pregnant. One of them is old. And you watch them over 7 months just make this journey to give respect to their fallen.
Interesting.
And that is about giving yourself over to, I mean, like, yeah, I mean, Buddhism is not about God so much as just evolution and transcendence
Hmm.
and nirvana. And it is just this lovely little docudrama about people dedicated to their faith, and like the world is throwing a lot of stuff at them, like rock slides and poverty, and they just kind of keep going. And that's a beautiful film. I'm not sure that is less available than the other three movies I
Okay.
mentioned, but that is another film festival film. It played America pretty well. And
Maybe yeah, maybe it'll show up on the Criterion channel, which I finally just started subscribing to about 4 months
good.
ago, and I love.
It's probably on Canopy or Mubi or
Canopy. Okay.
something.
Yeah. I'm trying.
Yeah,
I mean, it's hard, right? Because I already subscribed to like five other five other things, and
I know.
but then the Criterion channel just popped up one day, and it had a free trial, and I was like, well, let's do the trial, and then you get into it, and you're like, there's no
Oh yeah.
way I'm leaving this. This is like,
Well, and
this
it's
is
really worth it because
wonderful.
it is the Criterion Channel, and it's also a Turner Classic, so it's the new
Yeah.
film struck without
Oh yeah.
question, and it
Mhm.
has all these documentaries around it.
Mhm.
However, the Criterion Collection is also on HBO Max, but the special
Yes.
features are not.
Okay.
So, like, I was one of the first people. Like, there was I got like a card for it. I was one of the first people to sign up for Criterion Channel long before it launched, so
Okay.
I got a discount.
Oh, cool.
I basically kickstarted it
Yeah.
because Warner Brothers didn't and Turner did not give a crap.
Because I loved Filmstruck. I was disappointed when that went under.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
honestly, I see no difference between the Criterion Channel and Filmstruck other than
Mhm.
interactivity. And
Yeah.
the app on the Criterion Channel, especially on the Roku, is not that great.
Okay. Yeah.
Like set up your stuff on your computer and then use the app.
There you go. All right. So my film, I chose something a little bit more kind of obvious, and I thought maybe you might have you were going to mention this one, but you didn't. I went with Birdman from 2014,
Yeah.
which just had a lot of similarities. The ending, taking flight, a big ensemble cast of great actors, elements of comedy and drama all the way throughout, moments of randomness. Obviously a little bit more technically proficient with the look of it, having it be one shot all the way through. I only saw it once the weekend it came out, so 6 years ago. But I really enjoyed it. Made my top 10 list, and just thought it'd be kind of like an interesting there's enough similarities between the two films. Like, I thought if you want to look at a more modern film about some of the similar themes with a really good ensemble cast and an ending that's kind of similar, except in Birdman he actually makes it. So,
and all because a critic who used to hate him now likes him. He is an actor. He has been given everything that he ever wanted, which is respect. I can fly now.
But Birdman doesn't have the annoying, like, cutting back to 37-minute car chase.
No, it does have.
It's a little bit more focused,
It does have Emma Stone in a role that she is not right for.
Yeah, she got an Oscar nomination for that. So you were not in support of that.
I really like Emma Stone. I think she's miscast in that, and also like I know I shouldn't give a crap about the Oscars, but I know like both of us do because there's a history to it.
Yeah.
Even if it's meaningless.
Exactly.
It means something because it's the most popular one. Like if you want to talk about art, like the New York Film Critics Circle probably has the best taste, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But she, like, how there's always a list of who's going to be nominated. So that was the 5th spot. The 6th spot would have been Rose Byrne in Neighbors, and she's wonderful in Neighbors.
Really? You think Rose Byrne might have gotten an Oscar nomination for Neighbors?
It's when she was revealed to be hilarious.
Yeah.
Miscast up until that point. It was weird. She like people were actually talking about it that year. I know we don't talk about it anymore, but that was Rose Byrne's spot.
Yeah. No. Well, Rose Byrne was also great in Bridesmaids, which was before Neighbors, right? So she's had a great career in both drama and comedy. And yeah, definitely one of her funniest performances was the first Neighbors movie. I didn't have Emma Stone in Birdman. It felt to me like a lot of like yelling at the camera to get my Oscar nomination. There was a little bit of that.
I saw Birdman twice. I liked it more the second time because at that point it had gone through the Oscars and it won. Because I was like, how dare it beat Boyhood?
Yeah, Boyhood was I thought a better film.
Yes. Well, I also I adore Linklater.
Linklater,
who has a bit of Altman inside of him. Nashville and Slacker are essentially the same movie in my opinion.
That's a good point. Yeah,
that kind of stuff. And he's a person who tries ambitious things. They don't always work, but he does it in also a very loose way. It seems like everybody has a good time on set, and then he sort of secretly gives you these themes. He's a friend says he's good at smuggling.
Yeah. Before Sunset is probably one of my 10 favorite films of all time.
The second
one is wonderful.
I'm a romantic, so Before Sunrise is my favorite.
Okay. Yeah. But yes, that one's fun too.
Like none of the they all work together and they all are exactly what they need to be. But there's something just so youthful about Before Sunrise that that just makes my heart soar.
Yeah. So yeah, Birdman would be my choice. I loved your choices. Many titles I have not seen, so I'm going to check those out. The final segment is called Beyond the Flick. That's where we take an actor or director or genre affiliated with our movie, and we pick our 2 or 3 favorites and kind of talk about their career a little bit. So let's talk about Shelley Duvall. This was her first film. As you said, she would go on to do a lot more films with Altman, and a couple more kind of famous films outside of Altman too. What are your 2 or 3 favorite Shelley Duvall movies? What did you come up with?
So I would say Three Women, which is also I think my favorite Altman film, and I only watched it recently.
Okay.
I watched it in October. This is when we're watching a lot of scary movies. This was actually the scariest movie I saw last month.
It's a great film. I want to say 7 or 8 years ago, I rented the Criterion. There was a Criterion DVD or Blu-ray, and I watched it for the first time, and it knocked me out. It's a great film. It might be my favorite Altman movie. I just ran out of time. I wanted to revisit it for this, but I remember absolutely adoring it, and it's maybe her strongest performance on film.
It is, and it takes a lot from Bergman. It takes a lot from Persona. It's about our mentality switching places, like roles that women play. It's the one film of his that kind of doesn't seem to hate women, like of the 70s. I mean, maybe it still does because he paints them in very weird ways. But lovely dream of a film. It gets Southern California really right because it's like outside of Palm Springs, which is a terrifying place. It's beautiful but terrifying. That's how I feel about a lot of Southern California and the desert.
I remember it being a lot more focused than some of his other films of the 70s.
It is, and somehow based on a dream.
Based on a dream. Which sometimes, a movie based on a dream is going to be a what show, and then other times it can be something really special, which is Three Women.
I personally love Popeye, the most ambitious failure of them all.
Okay.
Because it's a bad Popeye adaptation, but it's a good adaptation of where the Popeye's origin comics, is my understanding. Most people miss the dry humor of the Harry Nilsson songs, which are intentionally simplistic, but also very, very, very smart, very cutting. And Shelley Duvall is a blast in it.
Perfectly cast in that.
Perfectly cast. It is the thing she is meant for. It's a lot of young up and coming actors. Bill Irwin's in it. Dennis Franz is in it. It's Linda Hunt's first movie.
Okay.
For instance, she's the mom of the big burly big burly boxer named Ox.
Was that Shelley Duvall's final film with Altman? Popeye? Did she make another one with him in the 80s or 90s? I don't think she did.
I don't think she did. No, she didn't.
I think Popeye was the end of a decade-long relationship with him making films.
And you hear not great stories coming out of that set because it was also a Robert Evans production, and it's just filled with cocaine. and they built this set like on the coast of Malta, and they just chilled out there. And this is also the movie she makes right after The Shining.
Okay, so she made. I was going to ask you if you knew that, which one she made first. So The Shining was first.
The Shining took a year to shoot.
Yeah, because it took so long, and then it opened in May of 1980. So it would make sense that The Shining would have been first, and then she went on to. So I feel like after The Shining, she would have wanted to take like a year break from filmmaking. She went like right into Popeye.
Right into Popeye, which just sounds like chaos, and that doesn't sound like something you want to revisit. I don't know what happened to him. I was surprised to see she's not in Come Back to the Fine and Dime, Jimmy Dean.
Yeah, 82.
Which is about Texans. I've only seen the play. I've never seen the movie. But she's perfect for a role that she is not in.
So you think there might have been some sort of disagreement or a falling out between Altman and Duvall? Because it is for him to use her that much and then no more is kind of strange.
Yeah, and around that time, that's when she's starting up Fairy Tale Theater, and she's producing it herself. She finally gets control, which I think she wanted. This is based off of a Wikipedia summary, so who knows?
I feel like after 1980, she pops up in a film here and there, but her film career after 1980 is not as prominent, right, as her film career of the 70s. Yeah,
and I watched mostly all of them over the last 3 weeks because I have nothing better to do.
Awesome.
She's in Time Bandits, playing two different characters, and neither scene works. A lot
so
of
that's
Time
81.
Bandits,
So that would have been right after Popeye.
And then Frankenweenie, 84.
Frankenweenie, which is great. Yeah, I love the Tim Burton Frankenweenie.
And Tim Burton directed a Fairy Tale Theater, the Aladdin episode.
Oh, I didn't know that. He directed a Fairy Tale Theater? Oh, that's news to me. That's great. He directed Aladdin?
I believe so, yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
And then she does Roxanne. She plays Dixie, who owns the diner. She's like the 10th most important character, and actually doesn't really need to be there. I'm sure there's a counterpart in Cyrano de Bergerac. Like I watched that with my wife, who had never seen Roxanne, but she knows Cyrano really well. She's like, oh, you see this tennis scene? This was a fencing scene in the play.
Yeah.
Real
quick about Fairy Tale Theater. I loved that show when I was a kid. I watched almost all of them. And then after like college, my roommates and I one night, I think we rented, like they had a DVD like set of the series, and we could not get through an episode. It's like an hour long every episode, and they move very slowly. And it's like
for children.
You have this nostalgia of it, and then you actually watch it as an adult, and it's tough.
Yeah, I'll never watch it. But yeah, so to jump back to 70s, so Brewster McCloud, McCabe and Miss Miller, Thieves Like Us, which is a nice little Depression era bank robber movie, but it's actually like about the poor people and not the criminals. Nashville, where she plays L.A. Joan, who's the most interesting character in Nashville, I think, because she's out of place the whole time.
Yeah, she never got an Oscar nomination. I believe Lily Tomlin was nominated for Nashville.
Lily Tomlin and the non-actress who plays the woman, the big star who's in the hospital and gets assassinated at the end, to spoil a 45-year-old film.
But yeah, I looked that up. I was like, did she ever get nominated for a Golden Globe? Or she was nominated for Best Actress at the BAFTAs, the British Academy Awards, for Three Women. That's like her only, and she won Best Actress for that at the Cannes Film Festival. So those are like her two big nominations or awards. She never got a Golden Globe or Oscar nomination.
Yeah, 77, she does Annie Hall.
Mm-hmm.
Then Popeye, Time Bandits, blah, 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 blah. And then we get to the 90s, 1991.
She's in Rocket Man.
She's in Rocket Man. Well, she's in Suburban Commando.
Yeah, Suburban Commando.
She's actually pretty funny in it.
Yeah.
In this chaotic film that I only watched because of this, because I'm not gonna watch a Hulk Hogan thing anymore. But I do have good memories of watching this silly freaking movie.
I remember liking it as a kid. It came out in like 91, right?
Yeah, and she and Christopher Lloyd play really well off each other. Yeah, unsurprisingly.
That's a great couple, like Christopher Lloyd and Shelley Duvall. Yeah, I have to watch that again. It's been a long time.
And then she has one scene in Soderbergh's The Underneath, the remake of Crisscross.
Okay, I don't think I've seen that. I've seen most of Soderbergh's films. I don't think I've seen The Underneath.
It's a studio movie. It's a noir starring Peter Gallagher. It's about an armored car heist. It is not good. Mm-hmm. And she plays his nurse in the third act. It's a cameo.
And then I believe her last film credit is 2002.
Manna from Heaven, 2002. Yep, you're right.
Yeah.
And she's like in an early Ryan Reynolds movie called Boltneck, which is a teenage Frankenstein movie. And then in 1998, she did Home Fries, the Drew Barrymore Luke Wilson movie written by Vince Gilligan, which is an awful film. And she is not good in it.
Home Fries. Yeah.
Don't watch it.
I saw, like, that was the year of Barrymore, right? So that was The Wedding Singer and Ever After. I saw those, but for some reason, Home Fries, I don't think I ever saw that one. I like Catherine O'Hara's in it, right? I love Catherine O'Hara, so I meant to see it at some point.
Yeah, she is Luke Wilson's mother. Okay. Drew Barrymore plays the daughter of Shelley Duvall, who are the Hicks of the story.
So Shelley Duvall in the night, like what would you say? Suburban Commando was her last kind of like leading role of some kind in a movie. After that, it's like
barely leading,
and after that, it's just a scene here and there kind of a thing, right? So she probably just at a certain point, the quality of the projects were lower and lower. She wasn't getting good parts. She probably just said, "I'm done." Has she done anything in the creative world after 2002? Like, has she written anything or?
I'm not sure.
Anywhere?
Sure she might have like written a book. I know that recently she was on Dr. Phil.
Dr. Phil, and she clearly has some like mental issues, right?
Well, don't we all?
We.
The thing is, it's that Dr. Phil exploited her.
Dr. Phil exploited her
for this episode, and he, she's just this nice Texan woman who wants to chill and live the rest of her life. She still produced kids things, but I also saw that the internet is full of Twitter is full of people who make like these cult item shirts and tote bags, and one of them made a Shelley Duvall shirt for her, and like 3 weeks ago he tracked her down and gave her the shirt, and she was very happy about it.
Cool.
At this point she just looks like she's having a nice end of her life, just chilling I'm sure she's in Texas. Mm-hmm. Just the photo was on like a porch, the most stereotypical porch I can think of for like a country house. Mm-hmm. And she, actresses especially, once they hit a certain age, they're sort of forced out of the industry, but also just kind of stop giving a crap. They don't want to be part of the system anymore. They don't want to be exploited. Mm-hmm. I just watched Princess Caribou, Phoebe Cates' final film from 1994, and then she showed up once more with her friends and husband.
Anniversary party,
which is a lovely film, but otherwise she retired 26 years ago. Bridget Fonda retires 6 years later.
Same year, right? I think, was it 2002?
The last thing I think I saw her in was Kiss of the Dragon, which was 2000.
2001, and then I think she did like the Snow Queen or something for television in 2002. Yeah. Another actress I loved when I was in high school, Bridget Fonda, great actress, and then she left.
Yeah, she has a wonderful life with Danny Elfman.
Yep.
And they're just chilling. I think, I try not to get gossipy about a lot of actors, so I didn't delve too far into why Shelley Duvall isn't around anymore, because, they're human beings. Like, you and I have both worked in the industry in a certain way, and these are just people.
Yeah.
Like, some of them want to be lauded, but most of them, it's just a job for them. You take it way more seriously than they do. It's just part of their life. They have enough money to just have a good rest of life with a family, and they don't have to wake up at 4 a.m. and work
on the call sheet at 5 a.m.
for 9 months or whatever.
Yeah.
Anytime. Like being in film school taught me I really did not like being on set. I'm
Yeah.
sure I could have fun on set, but at the time I didn't. That's why I like theater, which is all very collaborative,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
film
yeah.
isn't, but you're all coming
We've
together.
both made films, and I loved writing the screenplays. I loved editing the production part of filmmaking every single day, whether I was on set for an LMU short film or making some of my films just on my own with my own camera. The actual act of production was so exhausting, was
Yeah.
so hard that after I did that for about 10 years, and I don't miss that. You know?
Yeah, God bless people who can.
Yeah.
If they enjoy doing that, that's a thing. Like, you hear a lot of directors are a-holes, but a lot of them, it seems like you sort of have to be. You don't always have to be.
Mm-hmm.
Like Linklater, to go back to him, is somebody who seems like he runs a very casual set. Cameron Crowe runs a very casual set.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of directors don't, and they get success.
Mm-hmm.
But like, what are your Shelley Duvall favorite films? I intentionally did not say one because I expected you to say it.
Oh yeah, so I don't have any big surprises, and I kind of went back and forth on my second choice because she is in it so little. But I would say my third favorite. I have to watch it again, but I remember really loving it. Was Three Women, and then I mean she does play a role in it, and it's one of my favorite films of the '70s, and that's Annie Hall. Right? She has a few scenes in that, and then think long and hard about what my favorite might be, Mark.
Yeah, exactly.
It's The Shining, of course, which has one of the most fascinating behind the scenes documentaries shot, I believe, by Stanley Kubrick's daughter, right? Filmed all of that footage. It's like 20 to 30 minutes of footage. And a lot of it is, Stanley Kubrick being awful, Shelley Duvall on the set. And as you said, it lasted for like a year. And it creates this interesting scenario. It's like, okay, her performance in The Shining, I love, but did he need to go through all of that, making her life a living hell to get that performance out of her? If he hadn't done that, would her performance be worse in the movie? I don't know.
I know it's such a world of grays because, like I'm saying, like she doesn't seem like a directable actress.
Yeah,
she is a personality. She is herself. She is natural. She is effervescent, and he needed a certain kind of performance from her. And
a level of hysteria of her in the last 45 minutes of that movie would be hard for any actress, and being under the reins of Kubrick for a movie like that would have been a tough job, I think.
But even like I saw it I saw it when I was like 13, and I hadn't watched it again until last week. And when I was 13, I just read the book, and as you know, as a Stephen King mega fan, the movie is not the book.
Oh, it's not at all. Yeah,
not at all. And I was so angry about that as a 13-year-old that I didn't give a crap.
Yeah.
But this time, watching that third act, even knowing what Shelley Duvall was put through, it is so intense. She is so good. I don't get scared by movies very well. I have a very high tolerance for weirdness and horror. Mm-hmm. That shit gets under my skin. That last 40 minutes is just horrifying. And this is right after, like, so the baseball bat scene, he made her do, 137 takes?
Something crazy, right?
What?
That long walk up the staircase. Yeah.
Which is already edited. It's back and forth.
Yeah, it goes back. There's no reason to do a bunch of things.
It seems like, when you have Jack Nicholson, you can't direct him. He's going to be Jack Nicholson. So he had to put his focus somewhere. It wasn't on the kid playing Danny, because honestly, the less a kid actor does, the better. So you can project onto them. Mm-hmm. When kid actors try to act, it gets really annoying. So he only had her or Scatman Crothers. He focused it on her.
Yeah.
And it makes the film so good. I still think the movie's like 30 minutes too long, but that's a me thing.
Yeah, no, I remember when I first saw it as a kid, I really like this, but it's long. Like you really feel the length in The Shining. It's not a quick film. But I don't think The Shining would be as good if it were, 45 minutes shorter. I think it needs to breathe a little bit.
Oh, sure.
And as you say, I've seen it so many times, it still creeps me out. I watched it again last year right before Dr. Sleep came out, which is a really solid film. Doesn't have the same, real power of The Shining. I don't think any movie really could. And I just think like Shelley Duvall is such a unique choice for that character. He could have found like just a pretty blonde actress to play that role, which I believe in the novel, right? She's supposed to be, prettier, kind of more blonde, like a little bit more. And Shelley Duvall is not that, but such a unique character, and the way she plays it, and you always believe her, throughout the movie. She's always likable, even if there's a little bit of that eccentricity we come to, see in her work. This is one of the more like three-dimensional human beings I think she's played in a movie. She's not doing the same performance as Brewster McCloud. This is like a real person trying to take care of her son and trying to figure out, how am I going to survive, how am I going to save my child in this situation where it's snowing outside and there's nowhere we can go and my husband is going completely insane.
Oh man. Well, and here's the thing. The job that Jack Torrance gets to be the caretaker, it seems actually like, especially nowadays in 2020, in this pandemic year, it seems like a really great job if it weren't for all the freaking ghosts.
Yeah, exactly.
It seems cool. Yeah, I'll chill out for 6 months. And I've been to that hotel. It's a lovely hotel. On Mountain Hood.
Oh my gosh, I would love to see. Where is it located again?
It's like an hour outside of Portland, Oregon.
Okay. Oh, interesting. I didn't know it was that close to Portland.
Okay. Yeah, Mount Hood. It might have been longer. I went on a camping trip with my middle school friend and his wife, and then just kind of chilled outside there. But there's camping right below it. That's what we were doing.
Oh, cool. Yeah, so you were able to like drive up and see what it looks like. Does it look the same, or did they change?
Oh yeah, very intentionally the same, because they know what they have.
Oh, that's so cool. I'm gonna have to check that out. Yeah. So yeah, The Shining would be my favorite Shelley Duvall movie by far. But there's still some more Robert Altman films I need to get to. Like you said, you mentioned 2 or 3 I haven't seen from the 70s. So there's still more to check out. But yeah, as I said earlier, I've always loved the work of Shelley Duvall. Wish she was in more films of the 80s and 90s. And yeah, excited to check out more of her work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for doing this for me, Marcus. This has been such a great time talking about movies with you. It's bringing me back to when I was in college. It's been so much fun. To end, if you want to tell our listeners, promote anything you want to promote to our listeners, and where can our listeners find you online?
You can find me at Marcus_Gorman on Twitter, the one without the underscore, some random British guy. I have a website. You can learn more about my plays and some of my film work. It's marcusgorman.com. I would have news about plays, but readings can't happen right now, and plays can't happen right now. So the things I care about most, film and theater, are not happening in person. I have plays in development, is all I'll say.
Oh, fantastic.
Otherwise, the Seattle International Film Festival will be going virtual for 2021. What year is it? That is April 8th through 18th, and we will be starting to watch films pretty soon. It's going to be a smaller festival because it's virtual. We are actually the largest and most highly attended film festival in the country. Last year we had like 230 features. And it's a 3.5-week festival, but this year it's only going to be April 8th through 18th. So let's see what happens. Other than that, I'm just existing. I'm in a virtual play that will happen sometime, I think, in January. It's called Vampires of Neverwood. I covered myself in fake barbecue sauce and made noises, and I shot it in my den in front of a green screen. So the directors, Brendan Mack, the writers, Brendan Mack and Alexei Sofreze. I'm sorry, Alexei, if I mispronounced your last name. They wrote this play that was it's a choose your own adventure play that the audience is choosing. It was supposed to be live, but now that we can't do that, they are sending green screens and equipment out to people to shoot their parts, and they are editing it together.
Oh,
and then the audience will be virtual, and they will be choosing along with live actors, also virtual, working with pre-recorded segments of absolute insanity. It's like Dungeons and Dragons on every drug possible.
Nice.
So that's coming up soon. I'll let people know when that happens. But for everything else, marcusgorman.com.
Great. And the last thing, if you wanted to mention 10 years later, your blog, which has kind of a similar mission of the podcast, right? It's kind of, it's one thing to love or like a film or hate a film when it comes out, but it's another thing to look at it 10 years later or 25 years later or 50 years later and give it another look. If you want to tell our listeners about 10 years later. I
am the founder of 10 Years Ago Film and Films in Retrospect. It's fine. 10 years ago, that's been running. I don't think about it because I've been doing it for 10 years. People watch a film on the week of its 10th anniversary, and I give them 1,000 words to say whatever they want, as long as they talk about their difference in opinion from 10 years ago to now. It's been running for 10 years. I have no content restrictions, no film restrictions. Every 2 months I put out a call, but that is at 10yearsago.wordpress.com. 10 spelled out TEN, 10yearsago.wordpress.com. And it's something I do entirely for fun. There's no money involved. And the second it feels like too much work, I'll probably stop doing it, but it hasn't happened yet because Somebody sends me a review, I edit it, I format it, I put it up, I move on. And people, and it's people our age. So for the last 10 years, it's been watching them go through their teen years and their college years,
Yeah.
and this chaos of the last 20 years of American politics. So like the 10 years is the perfect number for looking back at your life and cinematic life and art life and political life.
Yeah, I remember I wrote too for your site. I think it was 10 years ago, right? I did The Grinch and I did The Family Man. So that was 10 years ago, talking about films from 10 years before that. So it's kind of crazy.
Oh my God, those movies are The Grinch is 20
The
years
Grinch
old.
and The Family Man are 20 years old. It's crazy how fast time flies.
Yeah.
Well, thank you Well, thank you so much, Marcus. This has been a blast. And thank you all for listening to Film at 50. You can find us online at filmat50.com, all the socials, and you can email us at 50yearsagoinfilm@gmail.com. There's also a Patreon page. You can go check out, support the podcast. At least 2 bonus exclusive episodes produced every month for that. So check that out. And until next time, remember, 50 never looked this good.